An HOA's private security team thought they were the law. They strutted around in tactical vests, handing out bogus fines and bullying residents. But they had no idea the new homeowner on the block, the man they were about to harass, was a top FBI agent. They thought they were making a house call. They were about to become his next case. If you love powerful stories where the underdog flips the script, make sure you're subscribed. And don't forget to check our other stories, each one packed with suspense, emotion, and lessons that stick with you long after the credits roll. You see stories like this online all the time. These incredibly satisfying tales where someone with fake authority gets spectacularly shut down by the real thing. And while the most over-the-top stories, like this one, are often dramatized, they tap into a very real fear about the abuse of power in America's neighborhoods. Homeowners associations, or HOAs, are incredibly powerful, and when that power gets mixed with prejudice, it can turn the dream of homeownership into a nightmare, especially for people of color. The big problem is selective enforcement, where rules get slapped on some residents, but completely ignored for others. It's a quiet, nasty form of discrimination that can make your own home feel hostile. This isn't just about being unfair, it's against the law. The Fair Housing Act is supposed to protect people from this kind of targeted harassment, but proving it can feel like an impossible battle. This story, while fictional, is a perfect illustration of what happens when that kind of systemic rot is dragged into the light by someone who simply can't be intimidated. Special Agent Marcus Thorne wasn't looking for trouble. After years of taking down organized crime rings and corrupt politicians for the FBI, all he wanted was a little peace and quiet. His new house in the perfectly manicured community of Oakwood Preserve was meant to be his sanctuary. He was a man who could spot the cracks in any perfect facade, but for once, he was hoping not to find any. That hope didn't even last a week. It started small. A letter from the HOA complaining that his trash cans were visible from the street for 2 hours past the deadline. Then a warning about the brand of mulch in his flower beds not being on the approved list. Marcus, a trained observer, couldn't help but notice his neighbors had the exact same violations, yet their mailboxes were empty. He was the only black man on his street, a fact that seemed to be of particular interest to the HOA. This slow burn of petty harassment caught fire about a month in. 2 men in ill-fitting black uniforms with Oakwood enforcement patches showed up at his door. The older one, a man named Henderson with a puffed-up chest, did all the talking. "Sir, we've gotten complaints about unapproved modifications to your property," Henderson announced, his voice practically dripping with phony authority. Marcus glanced back at his front porch, where he'd been in the middle of replacing a rickety railing. "I'm doing a basic repair," he said calmly. "All modifications, including repairs, need pre-approval from the Architectural Review Committee," Henderson recited, like a robot. "We have to issue a citation, and we'll need to inspect your home's interior to make sure there's no other unapproved work." That's when the alarms in Marcus's head, fine-tuned by years of sniffing out corruption, went off. An interior inspection for a porch railing? That wasn't just overreach. It was an illegal demand. He knew his rights, and he knew a shakedown when he saw one. They were testing him. "You are not coming into my house," Marcus said, his voice flat and firm. "You're not law enforcement, and you have no legal authority to demand entry." Henderson's face tightened. "We have the authority of the Oakwood Preserve HOA. We can put a lien on your property. We can have you removed." It was a classic intimidation tactic, one Marcus had heard from mobsters and crooked cops. He wasn't scared. He was interested. This wasn't just a power-tripping HOA. This was organized. It was corrupt. And now it had his undivided attention. For the next few weeks, Marcus let the HOA show its hand. He was no longer just a homeowner. He was an investigator on his own time. He documented everything. The enforcement car parked across from his house for hours, the certified letters with escalating and baseless fines, the hostile glares from Henderson and his partner. He also started talking to his neighbors, very quietly. He learned about an elderly woman nearly fined into poverty over the color of her welcome mat. He heard about a Hispanic family who sold their home after being relentlessly harassed for having family barbecues, something their white neighbors did every weekend. A clear pattern emerged, a textbook case of discrimination. The HOA, led by a man named Gerald Sterling and enforced by Henderson's wannabe cops, was running the neighborhood like a personal kingdom, targeting anyone who didn't fit their mold. It all came to a head on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus was in his garage when Henderson's car screeched to a halt at the end of his driveway, blocking him in. Henderson and his partner hopped out, now wearing tactical vests with what looked like cheap plastic holsters on their belts. "Marcus Thorne," Henderson barked, striding toward him. "You have numerous covenant violations. Your fines are delinquent. We're here to enforce the association's remediation protocol." "Remediation protocol?" Marcus asked, not moving an inch. "What does that mean?" "It means you cease all activity and vacate the premises until the fines are paid," Henderson declared. It was so absurd it was almost funny. He was trying to legally evict a homeowner from his own property. "And if I don't?" Henderson's hand drifted toward the plastic toy on his hip. "Then we are authorized to secure the property. You'd be trespassing." Threatening to secure his property and call him a trespasser. This was the moment Marcus was waiting for. He'd given them enough rope, and they had just fashioned it into a perfect noose. "You're going to secure my property?" Marcus repeated, a small smile finally appearing on his face. "On what authority?" "The authority of the Oakwood Preserve HOA board." Henderson shot back, his chest puffed out with imaginary power. "That's not real authority," Marcus said, his tone shifting instantly. The quiet neighbor was gone. In his place was a voice that commanded federal task forces, cold, precise, and absolute. "That's the authority of a book club with the Napoleon complex. Now, let me tell you about real authority." Marcus reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and flipped it open. The gold FBI shield seemed to catch all the light in the garage. "Special Agent Marcus Thorne, Federal Bureau of Investigation," he announced. "And you, Mr. Henderson, are in violation of U.S. Code Title 18, Section 912, for impersonating an officer. We can probably add state charges for extortion and coercion to the list, too." Henderson's jaw went slack. All the color drained from his face. His partner looked like he was about to throw up. The power dynamic didn't just shift, it evaporated. You're not," Henderson stammered. "I am," Marcus said, taking a step forward as they both instinctively stumbled back. "And for the past 2 months, I've been documenting the systemic civil rights violations committed by you and this board. Your little campaign of selective enforcement against minority residents is a crystal clear violation of the Fair Housing Act." He pointed at Henderson. "Every fake fine, every threat, every minute you spent trying to intimidate residents has been recorded. This isn't a neighborhood spat anymore. This is a federal investigation, and you two are the star subjects." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the actual police now to deal with you for impersonation. But don't worry, the U.S. Attorney's Office will be in touch about the federal charges. You wanted to play cops and robbers? You're about to find out what happens when you lose." The fallout for the Oakwood Preserve HOA was devastating. The arrival of real police cars, followed in the coming weeks by federal investigators, sent a shockwave through the community. Henderson and his partner were arrested for their actions. But that was just the beginning. The investigation Marcus launched peeled back years of corruption. It turned out the HOA president, Gerald Sterling, had been using the illegal fines to fund a lavish lifestyle, laundering the money through a shell company. The enforcement team was just his personal goon squad, paid to carry out his discriminatory agenda. The evidence Marcus collected, along with testimony from other residents who now felt safe enough to speak up, led to a massive civil rights lawsuit filed by the Department of Justice. The board members were sued for fraud, extortion, and numerous violations of the Fair Housing Act. The financial penalties were severe, and the board members were held individually liable. Thanks to Marcus's meticulous work, the case was airtight. The Oakwood Preserve HOA was ultimately dissolved by court order. A court-appointed administrator took over to rewrite the rules, establish fair governance, and ensure nothing like this could ever happen again. The reign of terror was over. This story might be a dramatization, But the legal battles homeowners face with their HOAs are all too real. Have you ever had a nightmare experience with an HOA? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe in justice and want to see more content that calls out the abuse of power, make sure to like and subscribe. The story of an FBI agent taking down a corrupt HOA is a satisfying power fantasy. In reality, the good guys don't always win so quickly, but the core issues are not fiction. All across the country, some HOAs engage in selective enforcement with clear racial bias. In a real case in Texas, HUD charged an HOA with discrimination for creating rules designed to push out black residents who used housing vouchers. The situation became so toxic that community social media pages were flooded with racist attacks, and the HOA did almost nothing to stop it. These aren't just squabbles over lawn ornaments. They are violations of our civil rights. The Fair Housing Act explicitly prohibits this kind of discrimination by an HOA. While suing an HOA is possible, it requires a mountain of evidence showing you were treated differently than others. What Agent Thorne did in this story represents what our legal system is supposed to do: hold power accountable and protect people. It's a powerful reminder that while some may try to build their own little discriminatory kingdoms, justice has a very long reach, and sometimes it's living right next door. This is Tracklight Stories. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.